It's Cardboard Time, episode number 111, and I'm your host, Arwen Kathke. On today's episode, I have a review of Cellar and an interview with Chrys Sellers of Hectic Electron Games. Well, thank you all so much for your patience while I took a week off last week. I don't want to go into too much detail as to why, but basically I did not feel like doing an episode, just needed a break, and sometimes you have to afford yourself the ability to do that. So again, thank you very much for sticking around with me and your patience. Follow up to my review of Diatoms. Sabrina actually uploaded color vision friendly guides to the solo commission cards. They are available on BGG that you can download them now. I believe it's a PDF, so you can just go in there, print off the PDF, or you can bring it up on your phone. Really well done. A big thanks to Sabrina for doing that. That is a huge help to those of us with color vision issues, and much appreciated. For our anniversary, Allie got me the first edition of Sunday Club. I did want to talk about that. Not a full review, but it is a kind of like Sunday paper type game that is only just puzzles like you'd find in the Sunday paper. If you like those kind of puzzles, I highly recommend checking this out. This was produced by one of the Horizons fellows, and I had a ton of fun playing around with this. I did wait a little bit to open it up, but once I did, I could not stop. It is sitting right next to me, completed, and looking forward to the next one. I do believe that I'm going to go in on a subscription for that. So, again, highly recommend checking that out if you do like those kind of puzzles. Well, let's talk about that Shelf of Aspiration. It is at 118. That is up by 3 and hovering dangerously on that 120 territory again. So we want to get some stuff played. I'm hoping this week we can take care of some of that. But 6 new games came in. 2 review copies, the first one being Perch and the second being Cantankerous Cats. Looking forward to checking both of those out. 2 purchases that I made while I was visiting my parents in Buffalo for Easter. The first one being Kinfire Delve Callus's Lab. This was a game that I really wanted to check out, one of the Kinfire Delve series. So while I was up in Buffalo, I went to a game store there that was very cool and picked that up, and I have since played it. I will be doing a review of it, just want to get a couple more games under my belt. I believe that you will be able to look forward to that on the next episode. The Architects of Amethyst, I did play this at Gamma, and I decided to pick that up as well. This was a lovely 2-player game. It has a lot of fun elements to it and a lot of things that made my brain happy, so I picked this one up as well. A good tile placement game. Highly recommend checking it out if you're looking for 2-player games. And I may do a review of this. I'm not entirely sure, but I did talk about it when I talked about my things that I saw at Gamma. The board game store that I did check out was Game and Gather. If you are in the Buffalo area, I would highly recommend checking them out. They are a fantastic little board game store and much better than the one that I used to go to while I was in Buffalo. There's a huge selection, very friendly vibes there, so go check them out. And then going into crowdfunding, I did get in a box from 25th Century with 2 games in it. The first one being Big Sur, and the second one being Cellar, which we will be talking about today. Since I did play this at Origins last year, that will not be added to the Shelf of Aspiration. So that is always good when you can play these things beforehand. The same thing with Architects. Having the ability to play these things and then bringing them into your collection is usually always preferred, so that you know what you're getting into when you pull that game out. So again, one game that I did play off of that shelf being Kinfire Delve, Callus's Lab. So let's talk about Wine Cellar. This one is from 1 to 8 players, plays in 20 minutes, designed by Andrew Stiles. The art is by Vincent Dutrait, and it is published by 25th Century Games. Let's auction off some wine. You and your rival sommeliers have decided to face off to determine who is the best. Each person will take on a client, building a cellar that ages well and is suited to the client's tastes. Over the course of 8 rounds in Wine Cellar, players will collect wine bottles to create a cellar for their clients. Bottles will be arranged to create a timeline for the order in which the wine will be consumed. Each bottle is worth different amounts based upon where it is placed in the timeline. Players will also receive points based on their client's preferences for wine type and country of origin. So I did pick this up on the crowdfunding campaign after I played this at Origins Game Fair with Andrew Stiles last year. And I instantly needed to back it. I was ready that night to go ahead and back it, and unfortunately I couldn't do it right then. I wanted it right there and then, because I think that this is a really good game to bring to conventions. I'll explain in a minute. At its core, you're drafting cards through an auction mechanic where the cards that you just used to bid on last round then become this round's cards that are up for grabs. And I love the fact that there's a couple of different layers going on here. The first is the age of the wine, which will score you points, with more points being landed if you can get it basically in the right spot in your cellar. That prime aging spot is what you're looking for, and each of the different spots that you wind up landing it in will give you different points for that specific card. So I really like that. And the catch is, and the thing that makes this really interesting, is you can only place it to the left or right of your existing bottles. So you can get something in the first round that guarantees you, hey, I'm going to start off this doesn't need a lot of aging, or this needs a ton of aging. I'm going to put it at my end point. I know I'm going to get those 8 points, and I'm going to build off of there. But the problem with that is the fact that you then don't have any flexibility to go and put anything off to that side. You're constantly stuck there, or you're needing to shift things down, which don't get you the optimal score. So I thought that was super interesting. Being added to that, the country of origin and type of wine, scoring your hidden buyer agenda points is really fun as well. It gives you a nice other thing to kind of worry about, not just where you're placing this in line, what is giving you those points, and trying to collect that bonus as well for those different bottles. So to me, it's just enough to keep me interested, but it isn't, too much that it's going to turn people off with rules overhead and get people kind of reeling from that. My favorite part in this game is really the tension in the auction mechanic, deciding when you can get away with a lower bid, and then when you have to bring out your big cards to get something that's important to you, because you have your set of cards that you will have for the rest of the game. So you know what you're dealing with, and you can kind of figure out, okay, this round I have something, that I really need. I need to bid high, or I can go and there's a number of different options that are going to work for me. I'm going to get rid of this low card so that I can save my high cards for the rounds that it matters. So, eking out a card that you wanted and, you just bid low that round, it always feels good. But this adds a lot of tension to that as well. So combined with the other mechanics, I feel that this works great. Again, this teaches really quickly, probably about 5 minutes from scratch. It's very easy for newer players to get their heads around. So I really like that. The wide variety of player count as well makes this a perfect convention game, makes this a perfect game to throw in your bag when you're not sure how many people are going to be coming in and out, and just basically have it there for when you need it. The 1 to 8 player count, I think, works really well. It seems to scale really well. Admittedly, I haven't played with all the player counts as of yet, but I've played with, 2, I've played with up to 7, and all of them have worked really well so far. One game at 6. I think that it does a really good job of scaling. There isn't a huge amount of downtime added as you add players. That does tend to be one of my gripes when you have a higher player count game, that you have to go and then sit around for a while. With the simultaneous bidding, you are only there as long as the player with the most analysis paralysis is trying to choose their card. So I think that works extremely well. From a color vision perspective, a couple of different notes. I think that the double coding was good overall. The rose cards can be a little bit hard to see, rosé rather, can be a little bit hard to see the symbol, but in comparison to everything else, the double coding works because nothing else is trying to share that color. It is vastly different from everything else. It's just the symbol can be a little bit difficult to see. For players with low color vision rather, or low vision in general, the country of origin tags can be a little bit small for some to see. So you may want to seat those players towards the center of the table where the cards are going to be. If you are at the fringes, it does get a little bit tough to see those cards because the symbol is so small. It does get tough to pick up on that, or at least it was for me sitting on the fringes in one of the rounds. So that's my notes on the color vision. For my final thoughts, overall, there's a reason that I have given a lot of attention to this game, going all the way back to last year. It was one game that I highlighted that I wanted to play at Origins, and then once I did play it on the ride home, I talked about it. It's really well done. It's played very well when I brought it to the table. Everybody has seemed to really, really like it and have fun with it. And again, it's taught very quickly as well. The wide variety of player counts and small box size combined makes this, for what I would consider, as we're getting into convention season, I think that it's a great little addition to your backpack and your rotation of games that you can bring with you. They're easy to get out. They're not going to be super taxing. So you have those late night sessions. You just bring this out. Enough to keep you interested, but not enough to catch you with a lot of rules overhead. So this is absolutely staying on my shelf. It is one that I recommend people check out however you can. If you find it at your friendly local game store, it isn't going to cost you a huge amount of money to pick this one up and give it a try. So I do recommend that people check it out however you can. That is Wine Cellar. And stay tuned, because coming up next, we have an interview with Chrys Sellers. Chrys Sellers, who uses she/they pronouns, is my guest on today's interview segment. Chrys is the TTRPG designer behind Hectic Electron Games, who published Raccoon Sky Pirates and the upcoming Defy the Gods, a queer sword and sorcery tabletop role-playing game. While TTRPGs aren't normally my focal point, I did want to highlight Chrys as a Horizons Fellow and their creation of queer media. Chrys, welcome to Cardboard Time.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here.
I'm very excited to have you on. You are relatively in our area. You're at least in the same state as we are. So, that is cool. We've seen you at a few conventions. My fiance did pick up Raccoon Sky Pirates a few years ago, which we will talk about. But yeah, I'm excited to have you on. Can you tell everyone a little bit about how you got into the hobby and how you got started on this journey?
Yeah, I started playing role-playing games when I was like 12 with first edition D&D, and fell out of it for a while, as people do. My older brother actually got me interested in it again. He was designing his own fantasy heartbreaker, back in the 80s. And then he went on to have a career in games, mostly video games, but thinking about these things all the time, and showed me it could be a career, that this was something people did. I mean, video games are a whole other racket, but he was very interested in games as an intellectual exercise, as a system of systems, and I found that really fascinating. And then I was just playing games and sort of always wanted to have more influence on the story. I went from playing to GMing to writing adventures, published one for Dungeon Crawl Classics, wrote a hack book for a Pelgrane Press game called Ashen Stars, and found a really great supportive group here in Columbus of story gamers that were very nurturing and encouraging of mine and a lot of other people's game designs. And that's what led to Raccoon Sky Pirates.
So it was kind of like a pipeline. You started as a player, and then you just kind of progressed through and through, and you want to do more and more and more.
Yeah. You don't have to have too many games at a con that you think are stupid before you're like, I'm just going to GM. And then you find out you have so much more control over your schedule, especially at Origins, where it's like, oh, no, I know what I'm doing in those slots because I'm running games. And then it's just it's just a slippery slope down to designing and running your own games. It's sad, really.
So you started in first edition, so you know all about THAC0 and all the crazy fun stuff that I came up on first edition as well. Admittedly later in my life, but my friend wanted to use first edition as kind of my introduction to it. And then once you got to like fourth and fifth, it's like, wow, there's a lot less math involved. This is wild.
I skipped second, I skipped fourth, was really pleasantly surprised by third after thinking second was some sort of weird aberration. I guess I was like old school already. And then I fifth was just such a big juggernaut. It was a welcome return to form from my point of view after fourth.
Do you still go back to first every once in a while, or have you kind of moved on from that?
I will always keep those books. I have not actually played D&D in forever. It's a tactical game, and I'm, at least at this point in my career and life, not that interested in tactical stuff. I guess, which is obvious because I'm making a story game for a sword and sorcery adventure.
Right.
So I've seen some interesting things being done tactically and also with crunchy rules. I just don't have a lot of curiosity about D&D right now.
I gotcha. It's kind of been an evolution for a number of people. A lot of people start in D&D and then they get more into the storytelling games because they, in a lot of cases, wind up being more fascinating. They're different. They're unique. I think that's what's so interesting about them.
I think what opened my eyes to the possibilities of story games, the first thing was Night Witches by Jason Morningstar, where one of the stats is medals, and you can roll plus medals, but you start out with none of them, and then you just, over a course of several missions, build them up. And like these other stats that were like, I mean, this is relatively early Powered by the Apocalypse at this point, but it was like, it put me in a milieu and a series of dramatic scenes that I never would have found my way to on my own. And I just found that really fascinating. I will say for D&D, I like to talk smack about it, but it is incredibly enveloping and absorbing. And I like story game improv stuff, but D&D does this amazing thing where it has you thinking about all these tactical rules so much that you let your guard down and you role play without thinking about it. And then you end up having these epic, long campaigns where your character and your friends' characters have moments you'll never forget. And I'm very jealous of D&D for having that and having the huge, as we said in video games, install base of people who play it and are, really into it. And like, wow, so I'm jealous of that. I want to have that, that's like goals.
Now, let's go and talk about Raccoon Sky Pirates for a minute, because this was a game unlike anything that I had ever played before. I'm normally in the board game space. I have played TTRPGs, but this was so incredibly different from the fact that you kind of built your own story and there was no GM. And the fact that it was so chaotic, but that was the whole point of it, really made it really fascinating. So my fiance had picked it up at a local convention, wanted to play it, sat on the shelf for a little while, as most TTRPGs do that you purchase.
They do.
And then, she wound up going, and we had an entire day. We made garbage plates, which are native to Rochester, New York, and made a whole day of it. So I'm wondering, can you tell us a little bit about how you came up with the design for something so unique?
Yeah, sure. At the time, I was really into the idea of the GM-less game, sort of from an ethical point of view. I was uncomfortable with the amount of authority and power invested in a GM. Although a lot of story games find ways of devolving that in pieces to the players. But I thought that it was important to try to have that as a design goal. And that got me in a lot of trouble because I had to end up adding a lot of structure. I mean, not trouble, but work where I had to add a lot of board gamey elements to keep things on track. A map, a strict series of scenes with clear endpoints. And at some point, I mean, I have to be honest, I don't remember exactly why I thought, well, you'll just roll to see what you do, but it ended up working out really well. That also caused me a lot of work because I ended up having to go back and figure out, well, like, you still have to know whether what you did is a success or not in some degree, and that can't just be up to you. At one point, I was saying to Avery Alder, who was giving me a lot of design advice at the time, this is crazy. I'll just stop with the roll to see what you do and know what you're going to do and roll to succeed. And she's like, no, that's the whole game. You can't change that. That's what makes this different. And I'm glad she said that because it's true. You don't really see it at the time. So I guess it's just that, like, having ideas is not a problem, like you can have a ton of ideas, and that one just hit on me at some point. I guess I thought it would be funny, and it did end up being funny. The hard thing is to develop an idea into something that actually works in play and keeps that empathic link between you as a designer and all the players. So it turned out to be perfect for raccoons. You don't really know what you're going to do before you do it.
It really does encompass that link between the gameplay that you're trying to get, which is just these raccoons that get these wild, harebrained ideas, and it's like, this is what I'm gonna do, and you just go and try to figure out how it's gonna work.
Yeah.
I had a lot of fun with it, even though it's not usually my thing. We still had a great time and really, enjoyed it quite a bit. So can you tell us a little bit about your most recent project, which is Defy the Gods?
Yeah, it's a queer sword and sorcery adventure romance set in fantasy ancient Mesopotamia. And it's powered by the Apocalypse game. It is sword and sorcery as a story game. It thrusts you into a world ruled by jealous gods and cruel tyrants of city-states who want to destroy you or push you to the margins and push you out of life. And you and your friends are struggling to live and exist and love who you love. I mean, it's a queer game, and you all have these talents, but you start out really with very little power or prestige or anything like that. So it's set in this ancient world, and you have all these sword and sorcery archetypes, like a sword fighter, a sorcerer, a sailor who's like mischievous, like Odysseus or Sinbad, who's in this submissive, devoted relationship with an exiled god, a wolfling like Princess Mononoke. You have these different character types that you can play, and because it's powered by the Apocalypse, they all have arcs. There's a lot more built around them than, say, a class, and so like you might be gathering their sword and sorcery archetypes, but they're also very resonant with queer life, recognizable people from queer life, and it turns out really there's a lot of overlap between sword and sorcery stories and queer stories. The struggle against oppressive authority as an underdog, the belief that the gods hate you. Well, in this game they actually do. The lack of recognition by the city's laws. Without making it too real, a fantasy adventure, but you just try to face down these powers, and eventually you can by seizing power for yourself, only that makes you more of a monster. And it's when you finally ascend to your own godlike power that you become an NPC and you just slide that character sheet over to the GM to use as an antagonist.
Oh, wow. That's cool.
Thanks. I mean, yeah, so power is treacherous. I'm very sus about power in this game. It's inspired by Conan and Clash of the Titans and Princess Mononoke, but Conan, who has this arc to become king, but he's sort of this Mary Sue character for Robert E. Howard. You have this same arc, but it's not good, It's powerful. It lets you get these gods off your back, the city tyrants, the gigantic creatures, the death. You get them all off your back, but only by becoming an asshole yourself.
There's a lot of ties in with what is going on currently, which, I mean, are even more inherent right now with the way that things are going. And I'm sure, these have always been themes throughout the years. There's always been a struggle for acceptance and rights and acknowledgement. But I think that especially right now, this is incredibly important and kind of mirroring real life. Why do you think that projects like this are so important for the queer community to see and to have?
I mean, we have to keep going, We have to have some kind of dream to have in our eye throughout all the shit. I think about this interview with James Baldwin where with his big sad smile, he's like, you can't tell the children there's no hope. This is him older, and I'm like, oh God, that's crushing. And I can't be crushed like that. I have to tell you, I not rated for James Baldwin's sadness, his level, I need to feel some kind of encouragement, and so that's why I'm putting in this game. I'm some kind of something you can play with your friends where you can all feel like, yeah, we're gonna defy some fucking gods, and whatever fate they have in store for us, we'll write our own fate. And so I can't speak for the whole queer community. I think why I needed to make this game was so that I had a way, at least even metaphorically, imagining myself putting off these powers. I think for queer people in general, if I was going to talk about the community, that even before getting to all that, like, oh, I'm going to stave off the horrors, it's like I'm going to imagine myself as somebody I want to be, that I'd like to be. And I'm going to imagine a world that I belong in. And that is super important. That helped me figure out I was trans. It helped me accept myself as a queer person in general. And I didn't even know why I was drawn to role-playing games way back when, why they were more important to me than other people in my family. But I really think that this permission to imagine myself as somebody else, imagine myself as a woman, imagine myself as impossible beings, and then to imagine a world also that I could change, that I could have some effect on, and where I just belong, super important. And I have to imagine that is important for other queer folks too.
So I think it's really interesting because you have this role-playing situation where you can explore and you can try to understand yourself through it. And you can have those situations where, like you said, I have the ability to shape and impact this world, through my actions in that. And what I find interesting is the fact that you now, as a designer, have taken that and given the ability for the next generation to come in and see themselves and actually shape the physical world here into something that might be a little bit better, that people can go and have those conversations as well. So I
God, I
think
hope so.
it's, yeah, it's so incredibly important for people to have that visibility and see themselves in that. It's
Yeah.
just like a core belief of mine.
I did not think I was trans when I started designing this game. I knew I was queer in several ways. I didn't realize I was trans. I thought I was, for some of these playbooks, I thought I was writing about other people. And then when I got to writing The Revenant, who has escaped the underworld and is no longer who they were in their past life, is no longer who they were when they were dead in the underworld, and is figuring out who they are now and all this possibility, I was like, oh my God, it's me. It's
Yeah.
me. And it's not, and it really went from, it's so corny, but I went from feeling like I was a supporting character in somebody's story and was writing about other people to feeling like the main character finally. So yeah, even if this game's Kickstarter doesn't go far or whatever, thank God I did it. Anyway, just
Because
everybody make a game. It'll change your life.
yeah, exactly. I find that really cool that you were able to figure yourself out that way and have that discovery as well. How long have you been working on this game?
I think about 4 years.
Okay.
So, and like a lot of this gameplay was really set things, before this administration, before things got so fucked up, like, extra special fucked up. So I didn't know how timely it was going to be when I finally got it ready to put out there.
Yeah, because that was like right after the pandemic, then is when you got started, pretty much.
Yeah, totally. Right after, yeah, still in the pandemic, really.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So your staff going through and looking at the Kickstarter is incredibly diverse. I do want to highlight that in a number of ways. When you started putting together the people that are going to be working on this and doing everything for it, did you have to seek out that diversity, or did it just kind of naturally coalesce where I wanted to work with these people? They're diverse people, and I just got a good team this way.
Well, to be clear, they're not staff. I mean, it's not like they're on a payroll.
Right.
These are people I was very lucky to get the opportunity to work with.
Hmm.
I paid them all as well as I was able. I'll say it was some of each. Like, in some cases, it was just that I knew Ray Najati through what was the Gauntlet, now the Open Hearth gaming community,
Hmm.
and he was already somebody who was running games for me there and really liked his game design, and then was lucky that he was available to be a consultant, give me system advice when he did, and when I really needed it. I needed some clarity. And I would say with the artists, I had to really try to seek out people who were more diverse, because the art style that I wanted at first was very conventional, and there are a ton of like German and Dutch artists on whatever that artist community is. Oh well, anyway, ArtStation, and I wanted this elaborate painterly style, and they were doing stuff in Sumeria and Babylon, with that sort of fantasy setting. But I'm really glad that I got the artists that I did. Very lucky to have gotten all of them. And it ended up being, for the most part, more of a story game style, which is less painterly usually and more defined by line work. But every one of them is fantastic. I did quite deliberately seek out cultural consultants.
Hmm.
And one of them is an Assyriologist at the university here in Columbus. And the other two, one was recommended to me by James Mendez Hodes, because I knew I needed a cultural consultant. He has this great resource for helping you find one. And that was Omar Ramadan Santiago. And then Bashir House I found at Big Bad Con. So part of it also was the circles I was going in, like Big Bad Con, which really prioritizes diversity, And that's how I got to work with Chrys from Brazil, who is like graphic designer for Evil Hat Games. And anyway, I don't know. Sorry, it's a long rambling answer, but
No, it's all good.
It was really very worthwhile.
So we do have to talk about the elephant in the room, the big T word that's looming over us all: tariffs.
Yes, not trans, right?
Not trans.
Not this time.
That's a good T word.
Yeah.
This is a bad T word.
Yeah.
So how are our tariffs kind of affecting your project? You know, what mitigations are you taking? What considerations have you done in running this project?
Well, I'm very lucky in that books so far are not part of these exorbitant tariffs. There are some relatively minor tariffs that they are subject to, but otherwise, because of what they mean for freedom of expression, people don't tariff books like they do other game materials, so long as it gets imported as a book and not as a game. Mm-hmm. The dice and the enamel pins are subject to the tariff. Fortunately, those are, compared to the book, pretty small ticket items. So those have driven up my costs for those add-ons, but they are add-ons. They're they are part of certain bundles on my Kickstarter, so those are definitely a little bit higher. But I did find one pin manufacturer who was like, "Oh, well, we'll pay the tariffs," and I honestly don't know how that works because that happens after I pay for the pins. But I'll figure that out if I am lucky enough to get there. But the books, thank God, were not subject to tariffs. But I end up having to raise the goal of my Kickstarter as a result of this, the funding goal, and the individual Kickstarter items are a little bit more expensive. But fortunately, like I say, the things that I'm building a Kickstarter out of, those pins and dice are relatively small.
Well, that is a plus. It's a plus that, the books are the main component of it, and they don't have the as exorbitant tariff on it. So that's a huge help.
I mean, board games are just so hosed. And I want to make a deluxe Raccoon Sky Pirates next, and that will have all these components, and I don't know what that's going to be like. I was thinking I would be making that early next year, maybe the next project, and it's just completely changed landscape.
And a lot of people are in the same boat where they've put off projects, they've put things on hold and said, we can't do this right now. We're going to hopefully come back to it if, the situation kind of improves and that. But yeah, it's tough. In what ways did the Horizons Fellowship help you as a creator?
That has been life-changing. That's been so good. They paid for me to go to Gamma Expo, which I'd never been to before. They got me in touch with not only other designers and publishers, but with Kat Tobin as my Horizons mentor. I already knew Kat from years of playing Pelgrane games, but I feel so lucky that they assigned her to me because we have good rapport from earlier, and because I respect her so much for what she does in indie role-playing games. I mean, yeah, they still count as indie because they're not Pathfinder, but she's built a company with employees and with many, many more people who aren't employees but who are contracting with Pelgrane, and they put out a lot of books, really well-produced books. So that was great. Just the community also of being able to sanity check with each other, reality check of, am I doing this right? Am I doing this wrong? I've gotten so much great free advice through there. Because I'm in Columbus, going to Origins is not a problem, but this time I'll get to actually stay downtown, which I never do. And the networking, I guess, has probably been the biggest part of it. We got to go to certain functions that were either put on for Horizons Fellows and Rising Stars, or to which Rising Stars and Horizons Fellows were invited that we would not have been otherwise. I've just met so many retailers and distributors and people. And there are still and that was Gamma Expo, but even after that, there are people who want to talk to me that would not if I were not a Horizons fellow. And so it's a tremendous honor. I feel incredibly lucky, and to be also recognized as what you're doing, somebody thinks it's worthwhile, is super. It's just, yeah.
And that's one thing, I do have my complaints about Gamma. I won't get into them.
There's a lot
now.
to complain about. I mean, there's a lot to complain about with Gamma in general, yeah.
But that is one thing that I think that they excel at so much is this program and really getting people highlighted that need to be highlighted, that are doing great work, that are doing, groundbreaking and game-changing work that really... I mean, I just look at the class that came out, last year and what they're doing. And now this year with y'all, that you're doing what you're doing with you, Sabrina, I think Ian was Sunday Club. I love Sunday Club. I just got my first issue and I'm absolutely loving it. So
they're so smart. They're so talented. A lot of props to Kimmy and Raichu for being Horizons alumni who wanted to make more of a community for us. That was really great. And props to Gamma, really. I remember in 2020 when then Gamma shat the bed with Black Lives Matter, and they just jumped the wrong way in a way that is inexplicable to me. But they have completely changed since then. Their old board seems to be different. And Horizons and what they've done for us, to me, shows that they're really, walking the walk.
I think it's the biggest reason why I give them as much space as I do, because I want to see that program continue to produce what it's produced, because it's outstanding.
I'm very, very grateful for the money they put into it, money that they could be making off of booths that that we're taking up. Like, it's very impressive.
So, do you play any hobby board games at all?
I love hobby board games.
Okay,
yeah.
Good.
I'm probably not quite as au courant as I used to be, having gone down a hole to write role-playing games. But there's a magic system that the sorcerer in Defy the Gods uses that is heavily based on the mechanics of this game, Alien Frontiers.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, so you roll a bunch of dice, and then you look for patterns in the dice, and whatever patterns you match, that's the spell you cast. And if you can't find any patterns, you're hosed. But I got that game through its crowdfunding program or project, whatever, and dug it out and found, like, okay, what kinds of dice matching are they doing in that worker placement game? So anyway, that's one. Had a great time playing Pandemic Legacy, all 3 seasons.
Do you have any favorites that stand out besides those?
Back before things all went to crap, I really liked Secret Hitler. As a hidden trader game, it was, had the most interesting themes to me and some really interesting and apparently very realistic mechanics of parliamentary democracy. And I liked Inhuman Conditions. That was good. It's a 2-player game. I'm trying to think what, I would say, my favorites are. I should, go and look in our games cabinet. Dixit. That's a big favorite.
Dixit.
Yeah.
Love Dixit.
Or apparently it's French, so it's Deceit.
Deceit?
Yeah, which takes on a whole new meaning,
Yeah.
Okay, Burgle Brothers. Burgle Brothers?
Oh, so good.
Yeah, Tim Fowers is a genius. And it's 2-player sequel, Fugitive. Just the pure cat and mouse mechanics of that are so good. I recently got, but haven't played yet, Katmai, The Bears of Brooks River.
I want to play that.
Yeah, I want to play that too, because I love Fat Bear Week.
Fat Bear Week is amazing.
Yeah. So those are probably my current favorites. I'll leave it at that.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
Well, and hopefully, I mean, if you're going to be at Origins, there's going to be a ton there as well. If you have time,
Yeah, yeah,
you'll be able to check out some more for sure.
yeah, absolutely. I'm fascinated by worker placement games. I'm fascinated by games that that tack story onto really solid mechanics. There are so many role-playing games coming out now made by just people putting them as PDFs on itch, and like blackjack can be a core mechanic. I've always wanted to play the Jack the Ripper gin rummy game. Like it's a mystery with gin, I think gin, not gin rummy, as the core mechanic, but you're telling this whole story of finding a killer.
Hmm.
So I'm fascinated by that. And I want to, and I'm definitely not, I'm lagging behind a lot of other people who have already adapted these things and put story around them. But as somebody who likes story and thinks that you can do a lot with systems, I'm really curious about how those things work, and I want to unpack them and take them apart.
I love that. And I think the more games that you play, the more ideas that you get. You see a system and you're like, oh,
Mm-hmm.
I can design something around this.
Mm-hmm.
This will perfectly mimic this I'm trying to do. I
Yeah.
love getting ideas from that.
What I really love about Powered by the Apocalypse games, they've almost gotten old fashioned now. They've been around a while, but I just like the core idea that the mechanics are always following and enabling the story, and that they're also always tightly coupled with the story. They're never there for their own sake. It's always in service of the story, and the story is what makes people feel things. And so I'm curious about these different mechanics that you can use for story, but I'm trying to always keep that in the front of my mind, that
Yeah,
that just
I
sort of core concept. Yeah.
love that. Any hobbies outside of the industry?
I used to make comics just for
Okay.
myself. I was a studio art major. I grew up drawing, but you have to draw a lot of panels to make comics. And I just was in a different place in my life, and so I walked away from that. But I still love reading comics, and maybe one day I'll with God enough time, I'll write them again and draw them. But yeah, so I have a ton of comics on my shelf. Used to do kung fu. Might get
Oh,
back to that again.
nice.
Um, but
I mean, it's
like
a
post transition,
good skill to
yeah,
have
yeah,
right now.
yeah. It's good to know. It's good to know some self defense. Just
Yep,
don't go looking for trouble. So
exactly.
yeah.
Do you have anything on the table other than your designs? Are you playing anybody else's designs or checking any other things out?
I have Moonlight on Roseville Beach by Richard Ruin, and I haven't read it yet, but Julian Legault is another Horizons fellow, and he wrote this really beautiful looking game called The Things We Become.
Ooh.
And then I'm curious about a bunch of OSR games, old school Renaissance. Um,
Mm-hmm.
uh, so I really like the information design in Knave 2, and I recently bought, but I haven't had a chance to read yet, a couple issues of the Electron archive, which just has great kind of OSRE art that is like somewhere between Mobius and Mockman. And I just am fascinated also by the format of like, okay, you're going to put out source books in a game in issues. Like, I thought that was really interesting.
That's
Um,
cool.
but there are so many games I want to read, Arwen, and it's tough. I want to read them, I want to play them. What's that phrase of like lifetime reading capacity? And like people just get books and suddenly realize that it's more books than they could read in their life. My older brother is a point where he'd been studying games forever, he's been working on certain games forever, and he said to me like, there comes a point where you realize you're not going to make all the things you want to make. And he was 10 years older than me, and I was like, oh God. at the time I was like, I don't feel that at all. I just feel full of possibility. This was maybe 10 years ago. And I had just recently started really getting into game design in a big way. And now I understand what he was talking about. And
Yeah.
it's still great to be in it. It's bittersweet at most, but it is, there's a lot. There's a lot.
It's wild that I, have come to the understanding of there's all these games that come out and all these amazing designs that come out, and I will not be able to play all of them. And you just can't. There's no time. There's other things that you have going on in your life, so you have to pick and choose what you do and hope for the best and hope that you pick the right ones, that are going to maximize your happiness. So
On the positive side, it's really wonderful to be in a time and place where there are so many great new games coming out and great new ideas, and great new experiences that you can
yeah.
have. It's we're so spoiled for choice. It's such a rich field, both in board games and role playing games and games in general.
Well, and considering, when I was getting into games in 2011, you had, a handful of games. You had your Fantasy Flight games were a lot of places, your Steve Jackson games. And that was, for the most part, it. You might have some Rio Grande over here. When you looked at the TTRPGs, it was very, very D&D oriented, which, I mean, still is. Then you got Pathfinder in.
Yeah, eating D&D's lunch.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
And to now see the shelves and see so much variety and see so much diversity makes me really happy because, like you said, you just have this plethora of options that you can go and you can explore if you're willing to, and really get into some really cool, unique stuff.
The Eurogames revolution, what was this, 20 years ago now, 25? It was amazing, and that cracked things open so much. And I mean, so yeah, the simplicity and elegance, the emergent gameplay, but then like I also like what it made room for, what these other games, and some people call them Ameritrash, that are all have all the miniatures and all the
Hmm.
theme and all the window dressing and really exalt in that and glory in that, and those are great too. So it's like by opening up this one design space, it opened up a completely other design space in its shadow, and I think that's really fantastic. I was just thinking about Power Station. It's such a great game of like creating an economy, but then Twilight Struggle is also unmatched. I'm looking over here again at my game shelf. Like, yeah. Anyway, it's really great. I feel really lucky.
It really is.
Oh,
So,
another game. Sorry, can I
oh,
just say
yeah,
another
yeah.
game that it was hard to figure out, but it was incredibly fun. Was Kinesis, God, the Lord of the Rings game, Kinesia. But it was so good. Like
Hmm.
it was so hard, and you just felt like a little hobbit in a big world. It was so thematic, and like each stage had different gameplay, and that Sauron piece felt so heavy. Like anyway, so just thinking about games I played that have really changed my thinking about games is I can't not mention that one.
Yeah, and we need more games to come out like that people have been inspired by those games to keep that going and to keep that momentum, flowing as well.
Totally, totally.
So how can people reach you on socials?
I am at Hectic Electron everywhere, on Blue Sky and Tumblr, Instagram, even on Facebook and X a little bit, since I am trying to tell everybody about this game, about Defy the Gods. But yeah, come find me there. Come say hi, and like let's talk about games.
Yeah, and I think in a world that is as crazy as this one is, games are the one thing that kind of keep me sane. So it's always
Yeah,
a good conversation to have.
totally.
Well, Chrys, it has been fantastic talking to you. Everybody, please go on Kickstarter and check out her game, Defy the Gods. It sounds amazing. I mean, you said the magic words with Alien Frontiers. It's like I'm in. I'm in.
Awesome. Thank you. It's been a real treat talking with you, Arwen.
Thanks, Chrys. And I think that'll do it for us today. If you want more information on Cardboard Time, you can always go to our website. The Instagram and Blue Sky is at Cardboard Time. The website is at cardboardtime.com. The Discord is on the Tabletop Express server. You can always email me at cardboardtime@gmail.com or go to the website for an invite to that Discord. And as always, thanks again for listening, and we'll see you around the table in 2 weeks for another episode of Cardboard Time.